Hello, Laverne here, and I'd like to thank you for joining me. May this video be a blessing to you and to your loved ones, and may it honor and glorify God and His kingdom. In this video, I'm going to be covering a few different topics that are interconnected. I'm going to be looking at, for example, recent news regarding Donald Trump, the President of the United States, suggestion that there need to be tighter gun controls. I'm going to look at what some people are saying about this. I'm going to be looking at one of his greatest supporters, someone who actually worked very hard to get him elected, someone who calls himself a Christian, that being Alex Jones. I'm going to look at what he has to say about Trump's suggestion that we need to have tighter gun controls. I'm also going to look at another man, a Christian, who prophesied that Trump would become the president and that he would do great and wonderful things for the United States. That man being Mark Taylor. I'm going to look at some of the things that he prophesied and what he and others are claiming to have been fulfilled and are being fulfilled. And I'm going to look at some of the things that he says is yet supposed to happen. I'm going to be looking at clips so we can compare and see really what has gone on from the time that Trump began to run for president and what is going on now and what's going to happen in the future. I believe it's important to understand what's going on because there are a good number of Christians who are teaching that Donald Trump is basically the resurrected, or I shouldn't say resurrected, but that he has the spirit of Cyrus from the Old Testament. Others are saying that he is the trumpet. He is the trumpet that's mentioned in prophecy. That his name, even the name Trump, is found in scriptures, and that he is this sort of Messiah that's going to save the United States. Well, I made videos prior to the election exposing him for who and what he is, and that is that he is actually a child of Satan. And that right now what we are hearing from many Christians are false prophecies, declaring him to be some sort of Messiah, to be the right hand of God during this time period that we are living in. But Yeshua warned us that there would be false prophets. He warned us that there are going to be people who are going to come to him come judgment day and say, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name. We healed in your name. We cast out demons in your name. So this is talking about true believers. And yet Yeshua will say to many of them, get away from me, you worker of iniquity, for I never knew you. What this means is that there are going to be people prophesying in the name of Christ. And yet he's going to say, get away from me. And many of these prophecies will seem to be fulfilled. It will seem as though the people making the prophecies are of God. But the truth is, they will not be of God, but rather be of Satan. My viewers, it's important to understand that Trump did not get in because of God, but rather because of Putin and his father, who is the father of lies, who is Satan. And Putin's true father and Trump's true father are one and the same. Don't believe these false prophecies about Trump. There's a reason why he is talking about bringing in gun control. Consider what was said and warned about President Obama. How many Christians warned that he wanted to bring in tighter gun control because he wanted to take away the guns of Americans? And so people were up in arms about Obama and what he wanted to do. Well, I'm going to share a clip about something that he specifically said, and I'm going to compare what Obama said to what Trump is saying. Because what Trump is saying now is, that wasn't the right time for the kind of gun controls that he's proposing, but now it is the right time. So I have a number of what I believe are important videos that are going to show a contrast of really what is going on in the world today. And you can decide for yourself. You make the decision. Is what's going on today really of God? Are the Christians who are backing Trump really true believers? Or are they leading people astray? Trying to get people to get in line and to follow Trump and to back him no matter what. All right, having explained what the video is about and why I'm making it, have a look at what I believe are some very important video clips of what's going on today.
In 2006, 1 month from the day Mark Taylor retired from his post as a career firefighter, he was suddenly overcome by a Holy Spirit-guided, supernatural vision of the future. This revelation, as the world would soon discover, was a message to the most powerful nation on earth.
The Spirit of God says, I have chosen this man, Donald Trump, for such a time as this.
It's time to embrace our glorious American destiny. Anything we can dream for our country, we can achieve for our country.
America will once again stand hand in hand with Israel, and the two shall be as one.
I want the Israeli people to know that the United States stands with Israel.
The dollar will be the strongest it has ever been in history of the United States and will once again be the currency by which all others are judged.
The economy is booming under this president.
We're up 254 points, 21,000 on the Dow.
They will say things about this man, the enemy, but it will not affect him.
Well, he's kind of a comic book figure. I mean, he's a show-off.
He's a sideshow who threatens to swallow the Republican Party.
He was attacked by other people who were running with him. His poll numbers would go up, theirs would go down, even to the point where they got kicked out of the race.
He would not be the commander-in-chief we need to keep our country safe.
Donald, adults learn not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We are suspending our campaign.
I am suspending my campaign.
This next election will be a clean sweep for the man that I have chosen.
Donald Trump will never be elected president of the United States.
It still looks like Hillary's the next president.
On Election Day 2016, the world witnessed the impossible when in the final hour, the map turned red.
Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States.
Donald Trump is going to be our president.
Well, my crystal ball's been shattered into atoms here because I predicted the exact opposite of what happened.
But the election of 2016 was only the beginning. Mark Taylor, author of the Trump prophecies that foretold Donald Trump's unlikely victory and the stock market reaction that would follow, has something new to say about what is coming next. Something that will change the future of America and the world forever.
There's a bigger picture that the church is not seeing right now.
The Trump prophecies, the astonishing true story of the man who saw tomorrow and what he says is coming next. Coming this 4th of July from Defender Publishing.
Knowing Donald Trump's background, what sort of test did you use to determine whether this was genuine?
I'm a very peculiar person in that actually attracted me as a Christian. I don't know why. It just did, because I look at the way Jesus behaved himself, and he was a name caller. And he called things as they were. You know, he was very black and white, and he offended a lot of people. And for some reason, it made sense to me.
It seemed like during the campaign you couldn't say anything one way or the other about Mr. Trump because you'd basically, we'd annoy about half our audience by doing it.
If I might, it's because there is religious spirits that are flying like crazy in the church.
Yeah.
There's a lot of religious junk on people, and they're so blinded by their religion that they can't see the real deal.
Well, we'll talk about that as we come back because discernment is key in this time. Things are happening that I don't think anybody predicted, and it's driving the power brokers in Washington, D.C. crazy. But maybe it's because they don't know what they're looking for either. Our conversation with Jennifer LeClaire, Mary Colbert, Mark Taylor continues next on Skywatch TV. Mark, the fact that a message was given to you that was proven correct, an accurate prophecy about the election of Donald Trump, indicates that there's something in God's plan about this, that he would reveal that to you 5 years before the election, when nobody thought he had a chance, even on election night. And, we don't have time to go through all of the angst that we experienced that night.
No, but it's in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting night and a long one. With just a couple of minutes, what were you told, if anything, about why Donald Trump now?
It wasn't so much as now, I guess, as it is what his purpose was. And that was to help turn America around. And it's not just America, what people have to understand. This is the battle for the entire earth right now. And God right now has denied the enemy's timeline. That is the bottom line. And that's why you're seeing the enemy kicking and screaming right now. He has denied the timeline of what they thought they were going to accomplish. And now it's going to be the army of God now who's going to take the fight to the enemy so that the gospel can go forth throughout the earth. And they see that. We've cut the head off that snake November 8th, so to speak, and now it's kicking, it's screaming, it's not liking it. So right now you're going to see victory after victory after victory for the army of God right now. So, but it was more so as timing, because this was all supposed to really go down in 2012 is what the Lord told me. Because I thought it was supposed to happen in 2012. And the Lord said, no, my people weren't ready yet. That's why I allowed Obama to stay in for another 4 years, so that they could build a righteous anger and say enough is enough, and they would rise to the occasion, which is exactly what we saw happen.
We're really not about doom and gloom. We don't believe there is doom and gloom ahead of us. We don't. I believe that we have bright, incredible things for the church that's going to move forward. That doesn't mean that the enemy's not going to be there trying to trip us up and rob us from it. I'm not saying it's going to be a bed of roses without any thorns. But I do believe that it's not this, you better go buy a bunch of food and store it up and, all hell's getting ready to break loose. I just don't believe that. Not that you shouldn't do that in case of a flood or tornado, be prepared for any kind of storms that are natural in your area. But I don't think it's the kind of calamity that has been painted to the church. I really don't believe that. I really believe we're in for some very exciting, prosperous times. And I have to tell you something. When I talk with millennials, they just that is such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, because they've grown up not hearing anything else.
I mean, you think about it, the doom and gloomers are all white-headed, 1 foot out of the grave. And it's well, no wonder, that's how they're seeing things. But it's not very good news to a young person who just had a baby and they're just getting off in their life and they're or a young kid who's in college who never got married and, he was hoping he'd get married one day. And man, it's it's all going to come to an end real quick. And I've heard that from so many people. And I have to just say, I apologize, that you're hearing that because I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think the church has lost its voice because it's lost the message. It's preaching the wrong message. The Bible says that the gospel is good news.
That's right.
Within the church, we've lost our message. We need to get back on point. And the point is that Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And God is wanting that message back on point to the church. And get, I was thinking about, when you were talking about Donald Trump is over, he has just, or he's in the middle of his tour, I think, during the taping of this show. By the time you watch it, it'll be past. And then there's all this stuff going on with the impeachment and where they're going to find and everything. And so we're getting emails, both Mark and I, and, what's going on? Oh, what's going to happen? And I'm like, come on, church. You just watched the Red Sea parted.
Yeah.
And you think that God has brought you over to this other side so that the enemy can come in and kill you and destroy us right here? That isn't even his...
History repeats, doesn't it?
It's so true. I'm just watch the waves crash in on your enemy.
You talk a bit, and I thought this was interesting, and see if correct me if I misunderstood, but the church misunderstanding, or basically tuned into the wrong frequency, Satan's frequency instead of God's frequency. Right. It's like we're on the wrong channel here, and we're mistaking the enemy's message for God's. Is that
absolutely? The church has listened to they've preached the doom and gloom message for so many years. You can become addicted to doom and gloom.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you tune into that frequency, what the Lord's showing me is that most of the church is on the enemy's frequency, and what they're doing is that they're hearing the plans of the second heaven and prophesying if it were the plans of the third heaven, and that's not the case. We need to actually pray about how do we get back on heaven's frequency, basically, and preach the good news. Jesus said, preach the good news. Well, when was the last time you heard good news in church? When was the last time you turned on television ministry and heard good news? It's all doom and gloom. It's apocalyptic.
And then came the cry. Now, this is how the Holy Spirit told me. He said, then came the cry of the bondage of the law. And when the law became great upon the people and the oppression of the law, and their cries reached heaven, heaven shook, and I sent my son. And he said, the next deliverance will not be likened unto the other two. It'll not be a cry of bondage, a cry of oppression, a cry of a need of deliverance. He said, when the cry of praise covers the earth, heaven will shake and my son will come.
Come on.
So
that changes everything for me. So we got a great awakening coming,
yes,
church.
Come on.
Great awakening.
That's right.
Now, how do we generate that cry of praise?
Well, through the gospel. My husband and I met a man that right now has an app that he developed. He was the co-founder of Microsoft. And Steve Jobs and he developed, and he was the co-developer of it. And Steve Jobs was a face, but he was the guy who was the brains behind it. 5.5 years ago, he had an encounter with Jesus in the middle of the night. And he has gotten radically saved. This man is on fire with the gospel. And he developed an app, and you can go on the phone now, and he is right now responsible through this app in 5 years of 1.5 billion people coming to Jesus.
Wow.
And he has got stories and encounters of Jesus appearing, angels, stories that are going on with angels that are bringing people to Jesus in the sense of, you need to come here, you need to go to the gospel, you need to go to this church. It's that kind of encounters. And he has got thousands and thousands. He is now like the number one on the hit list, not number one, but one of the top, he said, of ISIS and the radical Muslims to take out. Because the number of people coming to Jesus through his app, he has the gospel of Jesus Christ in every language on this app. And his goal right now, in the next 2 years, is to have an iPhone in the hands of every human in the world. So
to get that app into their hands.
So they can get the app and hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Folks, these are exciting times to be living. Very exciting.
Absolutely.
Last night on the NewsHour, President Obama joined Gwen Ifill for a wide-ranging interview and town hall meeting in Elkhart, Indiana. After the broadcast, the president continued to take questions from the audience. Gun shop owner Doug Rudy challenged the president's record on gun control.
Knowing that we apply common sense to other issues in our society, specifically like holding irresponsible people accountable for their actions when they drink and drive and kill somebody, and we do that without restricting control of cars and cell phones to the rest of us, the good guys, why then do you and Hillary want to control and restrict and limit gun manufacturers, gun owners, and the responsible use of guns and ammunition to the rest of us, the good guys, instead of holding the bad guys accountable for their actions?
First of all, the notion that I or Hillary or Democrats or whoever you want to choose are hell-bent on taking away folks' guns is just not true. And I don't care how many times the NRA says it. I'm about to leave office. There have been more guns sold since I've been president than just about any time in U.S. history. There are enough guns for every man, woman, and child in this country. And at no point have I ever proposed confiscating guns from responsible gun owners. So it's just not true. What I have said is precisely what you suggested, which is, why don't we treat this like every other thing that we use? I just came from a meeting today in the Situation Room in which I've got people who we know have been on ISIL websites, living here in the United States, U.S. citizens, and we're allowed to put them on the no-fly list when it comes to airlines. But because of the National Rifle Association, I cannot prohibit those people from buying a gun. This is somebody who is a known ISIL sympathizer, and if he wants to walk in to a gun store or a gun show right now and buy as many weapons as ammo as he can, nothing's prohibiting him from doing that, even though the FBI knows who that person is. So, sir, I just have to say respectfully that there is a way for us to have common sense gun laws. There is a way for us to make sure that lawful, responsible gun owners like yourself are able to use it for sporting, hunting, protecting yourself. But the only way we're going to do that is if we don't have a situation in which anything that is proposed is viewed as some tyrannical destruction of the Second Amendment. And that's how the issue too often gets framed.
President Trump shocked lawmakers in a bipartisan meeting on Wednesday, calling out the NRA, calling for comprehensive gun control measures backed by Democrats. The big question now, will those positions stick? Our chief White House correspondent John Carl has all the latest. Good morning, John.
Good morning, George. President Trump takes pride in being the most pro-NRA president that we have ever had. But he gathered Democrats and Republicans here at the White House and stunned them all by repeatedly taking positions firmly opposed by the NRA. As the television cameras rolled, Donald Trump urged, practically pleaded, lawmakers to impose some of the toughest new restrictions on guns in decades.
I see some folks that don't say nice things about me, and that's okay. Because if you turn that into this energy, I'll love you. I don't care.
As a candidate, Trump famously promised he would never let the NRA down. And while he once again praised them as true patriots, he repeatedly took positions that put him at odds with both the NRA and Republican leaders in Congress. He pushed the idea of raising the minimum age to buy assault weapons.
I would give very serious thought to it. It doesn't make sense that I have to wait till I'm 21 to get a handgun, but I can get this weapon at 18. I don't know.
He said one of the NRA's top positions, allowing concealed weapons to be carried across state lines, was a no-go. That got a fist bump from Senator Dianne Feinstein.
I just don't think you're going to get it approved, though, Judge. You're not going to get concealed carry approved. Amy and Dianne and a lot of other people, people may consider, they're never going to consider it, but people may consider it, but they're not going to consider it in this bill.
The president also embraced Connecticut Democrat Chris Murphy's call for background checks on all gun purchases, an idea Republicans have voted down again and again.
We can't get it done. There's nothing else like that, where it works, people want it, and we can't do it.
But you have a different president now.
Well, listen,
I mean, you went through a lot of presidents and you didn't get it done. You have a different president, and I think maybe you have a different attitude, too. I think people want to get it done.
Mr. President, it's going to have to be you that brings the Republicans to the table on this, because right now the gun lobby would stop it in its tracks.
I like that responsibility, Chris. I really do. I think it's time. It's time that a president stepped up.
At the close of the meeting, the president predicted what he called a, quote, amazing result. a big comprehensive measure on guns and school violence, something that has eluded Congress for decades. But to give you an idea, George, of just how big and heavy a lift this would be, Republicans are not excited. Look at what Ben Sasse, Republican senator, said after the meeting. He said, "We're not ditching any constitutional protections simply because the last person the president talked to today doesn't like them."
Yeah, that was some tough stuff. Still waiting to hear from the Republican leaders in Congress as well. John Carl, thanks very much.
It's already March 2nd. The Ides of March. That's when they killed Julius Caesar, right in the middle of March. Beware the Ides of March. Are we about to see the fall of President Trump? I don't go with the hype with CNN and all the other globalist-run disinformation outfits, propaganda. But I can sense the will of the people. I can pick up the spirit of the population, and I can talk to the man and woman on the street. And I can tell you that Trump has dented his aura. He has put a big, fat dent and a big old goose egg right on top of his head with a hammer, with the statements he's been making in these listening sessions he's been having with victims of the shooting and also members of Congress. And Dianne Feinstein hunched over like the archetypal witch without even wearing the green makeup, looking more witch-like than the witch in The Wizard of Oz. And you got to ask, why is he doing that? And I made some phone calls this morning and last night, and they said, listen, it's Ivanka and it's Jared. And I don't want to sit here and bash Ivanka and Jared. They're from New York. They grew up basically in little glass fish bowls. And to a goldfish that lives in a tiny little fish bowl, they think guns are scary. I mean, I get it. If you're domesticated, and your idea of fun is shopping at Saks Fifth Avenue, and you're all suave and fancy-pantsed, it sounds reasonable to give a little up. But all of us know the goal is to always have us give up, and take bites out of it until it's all gone. And we've got Dianne Feinstein, and we've got Michael Moore, and we've got the New York Times, and we've got Chuck Todd on the Sunday morning shows saying, we're going to repeal the entire thing and take all your guns. And we know about the UN treaty that Obama signed that says the abolition of civilian firearms is our goal. Quote, civilian ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. And that's kind of what leftism is. They want to run everything. They're control freaks. They're like collectors, people that collect, 400 dogs and cats or whatever, and there's feces 3 feet tall. And they just got to have more. It's mental illness. And that's what Satanism is they want dominance, they want power, they don't want any responsibility, and they want to wreck things and control them, and they want to look over and see a bunch of starving, yapping dogs begging to them in some dirty, flea-infested yard because it makes them feel powerful. Notice that about mentally ill people. They like to mistreat animals. And that's what it is. And so I don't blame Ivanka and Jared. They're goldfish. And I guess you could say Donald Trump looks like a big goldfish. But getting serious here, Trump is no goldfish. And his sons aren't either. And when you've got Eric Trump running around saying, well, I think not letting folks buy semi-automatic rifles till they're 21 is reasonable, and bump stocks, ban those. What happens then every time somebody uses something in a crime? We got to ban that? Well, there won't be any baseball bats or screwdrivers or butcher knives or cars or anything. So let's just stop right there and look at where we are. There are a lot of signs that Trump is starting to buckle. And we've had sources that have been worried about him being compromised for extracurricular activities other than his wife, which is not a good thing to do. But I am not a hypocrite in my life. I am certainly very heterosexual. I'm not promiscuous. But the point is, I don't judge people for what they're individually doing if it doesn't hurt somebody else. I judge them by their fruits because I've read the Bible. You look at people like King David, again, who had the same problem Donald Trump does. But his heart was good, so God said he was chief among men. So you have to really read the Bible to understand it. It's not hypocritical. It makes a lot of sense. America, because Trump wasn't a hypocrite and said he stood up for these things and did stand up for them, gave him a pass on some of the moral issues.
Fears of trade wars with U.S. allies and other countries are escalating tonight after President Trump's promise to slap tariffs on steel and aluminum. There have been calls for the president to dial back his plan, and the rhetoric and threats are intensifying at home and abroad. The news of President Trump's decision made for rocky trading overnight in Asian and European stock markets. It also led to tough words from foreign governments. Now that President Trump has announced that he plans to slap a 25% tariff on steel imports to the U.S. and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports. France's finance minister put Washington on notice.
The United States should know that if these unilateral decisions are confirmed, they would call for a strong, coordinated, and united response from the European Union. All options are on the table.
They were backed up by the European Union, which said today that it would be ready to react.
The EU has been a close security ally of the US for decades. We will not sit idly while our industry is hit with unfair measures that put thousands of European jobs at risk.
China's foreign ministry raised concerns about other countries following the U.S. lead.
The U.S. adopting anti-dumping and anti-subsidy tariffs in hundreds of cases of imported steel and aluminum products is to excessively protect their domestic products. If all countries imitate the U.S. approach, then this would have a grave impact on the global trade order.
And in Canada today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warned that a tariff would be disruptive.
That's why we are impressing upon the American administration the unacceptable nature of these proposals that are going to hurt them every bit as much as they will hurt us.
For his part, President Trump dismissed the criticism. In a tweet early this morning, he referenced U.S. trade deficits and insisted that, quote, trade wars are good and easy to win. On CNBC today, his Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, defended the decision.
If we aren't the least protectionist major country in the world, please tell me who is. So what's really been going on is the other countries have been picking away at us, dumping materials in here, subsidizing their industries, and we haven't been fighting back.
But there was opposition building here at home, including among some Republicans. In a statement, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse called the policy kooky 18th century protectionism that will jack up prices on American families and kill American jobs. That's what every trade war ultimately does. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who's been a dependable ally of the president, joined a GOP backlash. He said it would lead to the exact opposite outcome of the administration's stated objective, which is to protect American jobs. President Trump is expected to formally sign his tariff decision next week. He has not yet announced which countries will be named and which would be exempted. Worries about trade wars and interest rates sent Wall Street on more sharp swings. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell nearly 400 points before rebounding. It finished with a loss of 71 points to close at 24,538. The Nasdaq rose 77 points and the S&P 500 added 13. For the week, the Dow lost 3%, the Nasdaq fell 1%, and the S&P dropped 2%.
All right, that's it for the video clips, and it's now time to discuss what you just watched. I have a question that it is my hope many of you will respond in the comment section. It has to do with a hypothetical question that if Trump had lost the race and was not in politics, he didn't have a position within the government. If he had lost and Hillary Clinton was to propose the kind of gun legislation and the gun controls that Trump is now proposing, what do you think Trump would have had to say? Do you think he would have been supporting her? Do you think he would be supporting the kind of gun controls that he is now proposing? I believe the answer would be an obvious no. He would be up in arms. He would be denouncing the government and Hillary Clinton. He would say something like, see, I warned you that this would happen. I am a big fan and supporter of the NRA. There's no way that I would ever suggest that there should be these kinds of gun controls. This is what Trump would be saying if he was not in the position that he is now. Now consider the fact that during Obama's reign, people were constantly warning that he is the Antichrist and he is out to grab people's guns. That's what the shout was. But now that Obama's not in charge and it's now Trump, the same people who denounced Obama for trying to bring in any kind of controls, they are now supporting Trump. Christians who supported Trump and prophesied that he'd be this wonderful leader, they are going to continue to support him. But as you saw, he is starting to lose some of his supporters. People like Alex Jones. Alex Jones was one of the biggest supporters of Trump. And now he sees that there is this flip, that Trump has flipped, and he is now actually showing his true colors, what he's really about, and that is about control. People warned that Obama was going to bring in the United Nations, that there were United Nation troops in the United States, and he was setting the stage for martial law. Well, that never happened. All the warnings about Obama and those things never came to pass. But we now see with the kind of steps that Trump is willing to take, that he is willing to do far worse things than what Obama ever did. My viewers, I made warnings about this before. During the presidential campaign, I warned that Trump is not of God. And not just myself, many people did. But the evangelical committee, charismatics, Pentecostal evangelicals, and many other Christians thought Trump would be this great Messiah. But as you can see, he is all about control, and he is starting now to grab it. And now going on to another policy of his, that having to do with tariffs and a war on trade, a trade war. This is what we are going to see. This is going to hurt the American economy, not help it. So the prophecy of Mark Taylor about Trump, going to increase and help the economy, well, what you're going to see is the exact opposite. What you're going to see is this protectionist type thinking, which is really everything that the United States has always been against. So these trade wars are going to have a devastating effect on the economy. Now, again, going back to Obama, How many Christians warned that Obama was trying to destroy the American economy? And yet that never happened. But under Trump, when you look at what he's proposing, that could very well happen. Trump could bring about a collapse of the American economy. And yet Christians are still supporting him, prophesying that he is this great Messiah, that he was chosen by God. Well, what you need to understand is that God has removed his hand. Trump was put into power by Christians, by the evangelical, charismatic community. Now, think about this. During the election and leading up to it, unbelievers would not pray for any particular kind of a president. But the people who did the praying, who actually prayed to Yahweh for a particular kind of leader, well, without question, there were many Christians doing this. And so they got what they prayed for. God has answered their prayers. They have given them exactly the kind of president that they asked for. And the way this came about is Yahweh removed his hand and he allowed Satan to do his thing. And that, in part, meant that Putin had influence regarding the election. Putin had a hand in deciding who would become the president of the United States. And we are now seeing the results of that. Now, moving on now to the prophecies that you heard from the people at the beginning of the clips. Mark Taylor and many others are actually talking about this great revival that is supposed to come. 2018 is supposed to be a year of revival. Benny Hinn has declared this, that with the death of Billy Graham, that this would be the time that the veil is removed and there will be this great revival. Kenneth Copeland has said the same thing, that 2018 would be the year of great revival. And Kenneth Copeland is also working with the Pope to create a one world religion. And Kenneth Copeland is part of the evangelical charismatic committee that is part of a committee that Trump has formed, where he's getting all kinds of advice from. So there is a evangelical committee giving advice to Trump. And members of that same committee are now working with the Pope to form a one world religion. So there were many Christians who backed Trump, believing that he wasn't part of the Illuminati, that he wasn't part of the establishment, and therefore they could trust him. But as you can see, and as what was warned during the presidential campaign, many Christians warned that Trump could not be trusted, that he was a liar, that he was a bully, that he actually had mental issues, that he was unstable. And that is what we are seeing being brought forth here. I made a video in which I shared the spirit that is being passed on to Trump by these evangelical Christians is not the Holy Spirit, but rather a Kundalini spirit, among others. When these pastors, these evangelical charismatic pastors, are laying their hands on Trump, they have not passed on to him the Holy Spirit, but rather wicked and evil, deceptive spirit. And that is what is controlling and really speaking through Trump. That's what we see happening. These prophecies of Christians talking about a revival, they are false prophets. It will appear as if there is a revival. This is on the horizon without question. Hundreds of millions of people are going to come to confess Christ as their Lord. They are going to bow their knee. They are going to join in what appears to be a true revival, but it will be false fire. The stage is now set for there to be this false revival that is going to draw hundreds of millions of people into a heretical church system. And when this happens, it is going to set the stage for the Antichrist and false prophet to come in and take power. I've made a good number of videos explaining that this is what's going to happen, that they will come. The Antichrist, who will really be a counterfeit Christ, and the false prophet are going to come from Protestantism. And this false revival is going to set the stage for them. All right, that's my warning to you. I know many of you are going to remain Trump supporters, and there is nothing I can do. That veil simply will possibly never be removed from you. You will continue to be blind, and the only one who will be able to show you the truth and convince you of it will be the Holy Spirit. But as long as people remain in sin, as long as they are stuck in church dogma, as long as Christians are going to follow false prophets, then they will continue to believe the lies of those prophets. All right. As always, I look forward to your comments and messages. Till next time, peace and blessings.